Hey guys, LQ here with the LQ Review, and I'm back. I've actually been gone for a number of days. I'm in the midst of switching careers. So I'm leaving my job that I had with the Boy Scouts, and I'm going into teaching. I'm going to be teaching high school history, and that's exciting. I'm really excited about this new chapter in my life, and I haven't been making as many videos during this process just because I've been swamped with some other things. So I apologize for that, but I'm back, and I hope to get back on track of releasing several videos a day. Right now, I want to talk about my spoilerific review for Avengers Endgame. Yes, I've seen Avengers Endgame a couple of times now, and wanted to give my thoughts on some of the spoilers in the movie. First of all, let's talk about the three-act structure. The first act and second act were kind of a mixed bag. There was a lot to like. I loved the setup of the movie, the opening scene with Hawkeye and his kids and his family. That was heartbreaking, and I knew it was happening. When the second we saw Hawkeye, I knew it was going to happen. Still, it was heartbreaking. Great way to start the movie, and then they get right into Tony and Nebula, and they're rescued by Captain Marvel. And I think a lot of us kind of doubted that would be how they would be rescued, but they did it, and it worked. It worked because they had already connected the dots and already told us that Captain Marvel had met the Avengers. So clearly Captain Marvel was sent out to look for Tony. And so in that context, it worked just fine. So when Tony first meets Cap, that's something we've been waiting for since Civil War. And I'm glad that it wasn't just a hugfest reunion. There was still tension there. There was still a lot of bitterness. There was resentfulness. And Tony really laid into Cap. And talking about how we needed a suit of armor around the world, and I needed you. You said we would lose together. And, Cap just took it, and he knew that Tony had to vent. So all that was great. I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad it wasn't just a hug fest. And then the Avengers decide they're going to go get Thanos, get the stones, and bring everybody back. And that was a great scene. They whooped Thanos' butt, and it's something we've been waiting for a year. And Thor was able to finally go for the head and kill Thanos. So great stuff. But it was also a heartbreaking scene. When Rocket flipped over that gauntlet and he saw the stones weren't there, you could tell, like, oh no. There was heartbreak. There was fear. And even when Rhodey was like, he's got to be lying. He's got to have hidden himself somewhere. There was even panic in his voice. There was panic and denial. And all that was great. And then they go into the 5 years later, and the Scott Lang comes back, and the whole idea of time travel starts coming up. The first act I thought was really strong. It was a little slow in some ways, but once we got to the fight with Thanos, killing Thanos, and then moving into the setup for Act 2, talking about Ronan and just the whole setup for Act 2, all of Act 1 I thought was brilliant. Act 2 is where I had some problems. Act 2, the time travel, I liked a lot of it. I did, and I had no problems with the rules of the time travel. Changing the past doesn't change the future. It just creates branch realities. I had no problem with that. All that worked really well for me. The problem I had was that a lot of it felt kind of retread. So I did have problems with Act 2. We were seeing things that we've already seen from different angles. It was the Back to the Future Part 2 kind of tricks that they were pulling. And it was fun to watch, but it drug on a little long for me, and it just seemed like a retread. The thing that especially seemed like a retread was Natasha's death on Vormir. I felt like it wasn't a cheat because it had to happen. One of them had to sacrifice themselves to get the stone, and I knew one of them had to sacrifice themselves to get the stone once we saw it was Clint and Natasha going to Vormir. That was obvious that was going to have to happen. But the whole scene itself just felt kind of retready. It was another major death from another female character, and it was even down to the musical cues. It just felt like stuff that we'd seen before. I felt like Natasha's death should have carried a lot more weight than it did, but because it was a retread of something we saw in the very last movie, it just didn't feel as heavy and as important as it should have. So I didn't care for all that. The second act definitely was a mixed bag for me. Some of it was really funny. The Captain America's exchange with Captain America, all that was really fun. Seeing Loki get the Tesseract and disappear, obviously that's going to lead into the Loki Disney Plus series. Um, all that was a lot of fun, but it drug on, and as I said, it felt a little retreadish to me. Um, but that's okay. That's okay. I didn't really have a problem with it per se. It just ran a little long. The movie's over 3 hours long, so I felt like that middle part there was some stuff they could have trimmed out. The whole their second quest to get the Tesseract. Steve and Tony's second quest to get the Tesseract and to get additional pin particles. That was all really neat, but I felt like a lot of it. I felt like that whole scene. Well, I felt like that scene could have been cut down. I wouldn't want to cut it entirely because the exchange between Tony and his dad was beautiful, but I feel like that scene could have been shortened a little bit. Speaking of parents, Thor and his mom was one of the most beautiful scenes in the movie. It was comical, but it was also poignant and deep and important for the movie. Fat Thor was a great concept. It was a physical representation of how he felt. He wasn't. It wasn't just something that was played for laughs. This is a guy who's lost everything and he's been defeated and he views himself as a failure and he's literally lost everything. So how he looks was a physical representation of what was happening inside him. And I love that at the end of the movie, I'm skipping ahead to the final act, when he powered up before they fought Thanos, I love that he was still Fat Thor. He was Fat Thor, but he was in his armor, his beard was braided, and he just looked like he was ready for battle. All that was great. Speaking of the final act, it was everything I've ever wanted in a comic book movie. When Steve lifting Mjolnir, great. Something we've been waiting for a long time. But when Iron Man and Thor were out for the count, and Steve was facing down the armies of Thanos all by himself, and he tightens his shield that's broken, and that beautiful panoramic shot of Steve facing Thanos and his army, beautiful. I want that poster. That was the best shot in the movie, in my opinion. And then hearing Sam say, "On your left," and the portal's all open, and all the heroes that we've come to know hop out, and then you had the great line that we've been waiting for 11 years: Avengers assemble. That was the most beautiful moment in the movie for me. The last hour was perfect. Ever since from the moment Thanos started bombing the Avengers complex to the end, the movie was flawless. I loved it. The giant fight scene was great. Captain Marvel coming in and destroying the ship, that was good. Spider-Man, the football game where they all had the gauntlet and they were trying to get it through the defenders, that was great stuff. From Hawkeye to Black Panther to Spider-Man, great stuff. This is great comic booky stuff. So, and then obviously you had the final scene where Doctor Strange lifts his finger and tells Tony, "This is the one chance." And Tony goes for the gauntlet and he gets the stones off, and Thanos, "I am inevitable." And there's no stones there. And then Tony says, "I am Iron Man." And you could just see the anger and the conviction in his face when he says, "I am Iron Man." So that whole end of the movie was heartbreaking, with Tony being gone, Happy's exchange with Tony's daughter, the "I love you 3000" message, all that was just poignant and sad and heartbreaking. The funeral, I mean, what a great hero send off for Iron Man. I'm speechless. The whole Captain America thing, I liked it. I don't know that it exactly follows the rules that they set up in the movie, but I liked it, and it was a great ending for a great hero as far as Captain America is concerned also. And giving the shield over to Sam, I thought was a great move, and I think that's going to set up the Falcon and Winter Soldier Disney Plus show quite well as well. This movie was phenomenal. It was great. It was something we've been all been waiting for years. This is definitely a smiley face emoji. Can't say enough good things about it. Avengers Endgame was the culmination of one of the greatest 11-year franchise in history. I mean, it was a feat in movie making, and it will probably never be duplicated again. I love it. Can't say enough good things about it. I plan on putting a couple more videos out about Avengers Endgame, but great movie. Check it out. I'm LQ with the LQ Review. Thank you for being here, where we talk about all the geeky, nerdy stuff that we love to talk about. Until next time, see you later.